Do you have what it takes to survive The Running Man? The world's deadliest game show?
Oh, shit!
So, much like yourself, I did read The Running Man at a young age, and I think it's interesting to read it when you're young and potentially see the first film, and to revisit it when you're older because you have a bit more context. So what's it like for you to go back to this thing that you read when you were really young and then revisit it as an adult with new context and new life experience?
I think it's twofold. On one hand, I think that I read the book when I was a teenager, and I read it before I had seen the 1987 film. So I was well aware that they'd radically changed. The film was a radical adaptation. It was completely different, basically. They were just doing their own thing. So in my head, I thought, oh, there's like a whole other film in this source material. And the things that I wanted to bring to the screen didn't really change, which was like how the game works, the fact it's out in the open, and it's an expansive sort of national stroke global manhunt. The idea that Ben Richards is the center of every scene, so you start to feel when you're reading it and watching the movie like you're going on the game with him. And then who Ben Richards is as well. I think there's something very powerful about the fact that he is a guy that's coming off the street and that he goes to the network building out of choice. I mean, desperation, but it's still his own choice to do it, which is very different from the previous one. In terms of what's different, I mean, I think that was the part of the fun and the challenge of the adaptation is now we're writing adaptation with everything we know about media and even reality TV in the last, in this millennium. And that was really interesting in a way because now, the book is set in 2025. Now we're here and, the gap between the science fiction and reality is like a bleeding edge at this point.
I've been thinking about the show. For the next 30 days, everyone in the country is trying to murder me. And that's crazy, right?
And I talked to Lee Pace last week, and he told me that kind of from the start of shooting to now, it's basically just been a year that you've worked on The Running Man, which is crazy, the amount of stuff that you packed into this. And to use a MacGruber term, you've assembled a literal dream team of killers in terms of the cast for this film. And I was just wondering for you, when it comes to making a film that's this big and you have a limited amount of time to do it, what it's like trying to create like this big ensemble cast, because I know you've done it for other movies before where you've probably had more time to work on it than something like this.
I mean, it was a real kind of Herculean effort. I don't think it was like rushed. It was more the fact that we had the benefit of working with a crew that we'd worked with before. So with a couple of key exceptions, most of the crew I'd worked with on previous movies, and obviously that's worth its weight in gold in terms of a shorthand of so you can literally hit the ground running, and which we did, because we didn't really go into pre-production until midway through last year. But I'm really proud of what we managed to pull off. I mean, I worry that it sets a dangerous precedent for myself, just in terms of how exhausted I am. But, and also just getting that cast together. I mean, ironically, the only person who I'd worked with before was Brampton's own Michael Cera. Yes. So everybody else was new to me and a joy, to work with this cast.
I know a lot of times when writers are delivering an action movie to their cast, sometimes in the script it'll just say, big action sequence happens here. But you have someone like Glenn Powell who's trying to do a lot of his own stunts. He really does come from that Tom Cruise school of, I really want to do it myself. So for you, when you bring this script that's very action heavy to actors, how much of that action is scripted and that you have in mind, and how much comes from collaboration later down the line?
It's a bit of both. I mean, it's all in the script. I think the key when writing action is to do it in a very, in a very sort of sharp way. Nobody likes looking at a page of stage direction like that. So you kind of do it almost like a sort of like a beat script in a way. It's kind of but then in working with Glenn and the stunt team, because Ben Richards is such a focus of every single action scene, you're trying to work out how much you could do with Glenn. And also because the whole thing's from his perspective. It's both kind of limiting in the visual storytelling in some ways, but also completely freeing in another, because like we're following him and we don't really show any perspectives that he doesn't have, you know?
Yeah. And in terms of the filmmaking technique, what you always come back to a lot of similar things in your movies. I know you've talked a lot recently about your beloved Texas Switch.
Oh, there's lots of them in this film. I'm excited for some people to figure them out.
There's such a lovely little thing to notice when you know how movies are made. But
there's one in the movie that's so slick, I defy anybody to spot it first time.
I even love ones that are not slick. I think my favorite one of all time is in the Clint Eastwood film Blood Work. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a scene where Clint Eastwood falls off a roof. Clint Eastwood falls off a roof, and then seconds later he's up and running.
I gotta check that one out.
Falls into like a thing of like cardboard boxes, and I'm like, he just starts running. I'm like, not slick, but you know, it warms my heart to see things like that.
I gotta check that one out.
But for you, there's a lot of filmmaking techniques that you come back to, and I think The Running Man really speaks to a lot of things that you've used throughout your career. Are there any technical tricks that you keep coming back to that sometimes are so difficult you wonder why you still do them?
Well, doing things in one shot or one take is always really, it's always ambitious, but when it goes well, it's sort of the greatest feeling. And I think because of the nature of this film, and because it's partly a show that's on TV, and that there are cameras that are recording it. I mean, one of the most complicated parts is in a sequence towards the end where they're in a confined space with 3 cameras. So we had to kind of shoot the movie and always have another camera on it as well that's floating. So it looks really cool in the finished thing, but it was very complicated to do. But the thing is, you set the ambition level yourself, so you can't really blame it on anybody else. So when you're standing there at the end of a long day saying, whose idea was this? You think, it was my idea.
Every time I tell people that I'm seeing an Edgar Wright movie, obviously the first question is, how is it? The second question is, how's the soundtrack? Invariably, that's always how it goes. So I was wondering for you what it was like to put together the soundtrack for this film, and if there are any songs that you just have like in your mind that you want to use for a movie, but you haven't found the right movie for that song.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say this one has a little less than some of the previous ones just because of the nature of the film, and it felt like it was more of a canvas for Steve Price and his amazing score. But there are some, the needle drops that are in there I'm really sort of happy with. And, like there's one song in there, He's Gonna Step on You Again by John Congas. I've loved that song for years, and it's about finding the right film where it fits, where there's like, the theme of that song and the film is perfect. So yeah, there's lots of artists that I adore that I've never used in a movie. David Bowie, Prince, the Beatles, the Pixies. So, but it has to be like right for the scene. And sometimes you there's a song that you think like this is the perfect song for this movie, but it doesn't quite meet its moment,